Welcome to the GeekWire conversation with the two candidates for Seattle mayor. Joining us right now is former council president and briefly interim mayor of Seattle, Bruce Harrell. Bruce, thank you for joining GeekWire.
Thank you for having me, Mike. Excited to be here.
And obviously the race is heating up, going to heat up even more. So let's get right to the questions so we don't take too much of your time because you're probably headed to other events today. So first question, what will your administration do to retain Seattle's competitive edge as a startup, tech, and business hub?
Well, great. And again, thanks for having me. So I think that, first of all, we have to look at what attracts talent and, having a clean city, a certain quality of life, certain public safety expectations. People migrate to destination locations, talent does, and in order to keep, attract, and even build the talent from within, we have to have a certain quality of life. And that's why I'm a strong proponent of effective public safety. I didn't subscribe to the quote unquote defund model because I wanted everyone to know we're heading in the right direction to optimize public safety. So I'll start with that. Second, I think that the city has to facilitate sort of partnership with industry leaders. And I'm not just talking about Amazon, but I'm talking about the large tech companies in the region. And even those companies who heavily rely on tech. You wouldn't think of Starbucks or Boeing as a technology company per se. But as we well know, they are all, their use of technology can give them a competitive edge. And so I think the partnerships that the city has to keep to make sure we retain large employers here and the ancillary smaller employers here, that we need to facilitate those relationships to make sure that industry leaders are here. And we've done an average job of that. And I think not so much a great job recently, but that's a critical component. I'd also suggest that the city has to make sure that the supportive services in the industry, whether it's the legal community or the finance community, the VCs, the hedge funders, the investor community, that they are comfortable and they feel receptive here because that part of the ecosystem in the world of technology. And I think you may know I served as a chief counsel of a telecom company, and I spent a vast majority of my earlier career in technology, as has my wife, who's been in the high tech world for over 35 years. And so that ecosystem of support services, ancillary services is critical. And the city has to make sure that we keep that talent around. And the last 2 points I'll just make on this first question is investing in higher education, that we have to make sure that we have some of the best educational facilities around here, particularly in the field of math or qualitative sciences and the kinds of educational backgrounds we'll want to see in our talent. And again, a robust infrastructure, making sure whether it's a broadband, I know you have a municipal broadband question you'll ask, but whatever the infrastructure needs of the industry are, that we make sure we have those here. That's going to be critical for their success.
All right, well then, building on that, what would you say to the tech and business community that it hasn't heard, but that it needs to hear at this point?
Sure. Well, simple words. We welcome you. We value you. We do not take you for granted. What has happened in Seattle, and I was born here, and I've seen the growth, and I welcome the growth. We've gone from, 400. I've seen it go from 400,000 plus to 750,000 in the recent decade or two. And people complain because with that growth comes problems, big city problems. We understand that, but I don't begrudge anyone from coming to this beautiful city. I welcome them. So my message to them is we welcome you, we value you, we want to build community with you. And for those things that attracted my Black grandparents here from the Jim Crow South and my Japanese family from Japan here for jobs and opportunity and a good quality of life, whether you have come here last week or 50 years ago, we welcome you and we value you.
All right, well then that actually leads us perfectly to the next question. Now that many employees have a choice on where to live and where to work on their jobs, make a case for why they should stay in Seattle.
Well, number one, Mike, bar none, this is the beautiful, most wonderful place on earth because we have it all here, whether it's a stream system, lakes, salt water. If you want to water ski or snow ski, you want to scuba dive, you want to hike, you want to fish, Whatever you want from an outdoors standpoint is here. We have great educational institutions. We have great industry leaders here. We have a compassionate, a more liberal-minded set of residents here. We are a well-read city. We're well-educated, and you don't come here if you don't like rain, and we find a way to enjoy the elements here in all seasons. I'd all tell people, well, when it's raining down here, it's likely snowing up on the mountains. I'd also suggest that we are the leaders in climate change, and we know that now people, even those who are skeptics, are understanding the war against global warming. And so here, if you are vested in not only people, but in our earth, in our air, in our water as well, this is the go-to place to have these discussions on how we could save our planet. And then last, I would say that all of the answers that we struggle with in this city, whether it's race and social justice, climate change, police reform, that here we were, as you may recall, a maritime city, a port city, and we built upon that layers of innovation and high tech and global science and healthcare. So we have all of the components to figure out our most critical questions and answers here in Seattle, which I think we can truly change the narrative in this country. And quite candidly, that's why I'm running for mayor. I think we have an unprecedented opportunity to help many of the things that our country is struggling with. That's why you want to be here in Seattle, and that's why you want to stay here in Seattle.
Well, before the pandemic, Seattle's downtown at noon every workday was one of the most densely populated 2 square miles in the Western United States. Obviously now it's something quite different. What is your plan to make downtown appeal to the workers when at least some of them, and it's going to be thousands of them, eventually return to their offices?
Well, number one, I'm not even satisfied with how downtown was pre-pandemic. If I'm going to be brutally honest, I only know how to be brutally honest to a fault. And because I've been elected 3 times, will people say, well, shouldn't you take some of the ownership? Well, first of all, I'll always take ownership of any problems that I'm a part of because I focus on the solutions. And a city council member's job is to pass a law or to allocate a budget. Those are the charter obligations of an elected on the council member. And I don't think we need new laws or new budget allocations per se. I think the problem is that it's completely unsafe, and that we have right now a city of, I think, ineffective leaders sort of pointing the fingers at one another, and no one's sort of taking charge. And so what I would like to see, right, people who are unhoused housed. I think we have enough when we're spending, $200 to $300 million toward housing people who are unhoused. I think it's inhumane to allow them to live on sidewalks without water or without heat. So what we will do is to make sure that people are housed, and we will make sure they get the case management services, the individualized case management services, realizing that just a house is not the answer alone. We will use the built environment to figure out how you activate an area. Whether it's open space for music, whether it's an allowance of a relaxation regulatory standards to let restaurants sort of do their thing and build in sort of funky areas. We want to activate downtown. So not only is it safe, but it becomes vibrant, sort of a go-to place. In creating this, Mike, I want to make it clear that we will collectively do a visioning exercise. We will talk to neighborhood advocates downtown, business leaders, philanthropic leaders, civic leaders, and we'll have a visioning exercise as to what downtown should look like, the new downtown, if you will. That's an opportunity that COVID will give us. I'm a firm believer in activating with music and with poetry and using the built environment to reclaim a positive narrative. And quite candidly, that's what we have to do. And that's what I'm going to do as elected mayor.
Well, perfect point then, because some of this is going to take additional resources. What should the business community be prepared to shoulder financially, civically, to help pay for those challenges that you outlined that are faced by Seattle?
Almost to a fault, when I start talking about taxes, I am never shy to say, yes, particularly large companies need to pay their fair share of taxes. And I think that we're going to have discussions in the state legislature about what that looks like. And I don't think there's ever really been a dispute there that We also have to be mindful in any taxing policy that cities are competing for jobs and employers. And so to a large extent, we do not want to lose many of our employers in that they are the strongest tax base. So we start off with number one, making sure that our tax system is not nearly as regressive as it is. And you'll see many people who've endorsed my candidacy who were the leaders in climate change and police reform in Olympia have endorsed my candidacy because we will establish a more of a progressive tax structure on a statewide basis and citywide basis. But we're not at all spending our money, even our existing tax dollars, efficiently or effectively at all. And I think we should be the first to admit this as those that have the ability to look at the budget. So I'll also make sure, when elected, that the corporate social responsibility goals of the employer community, that they are aligned with many of the problems that have been caused by our enormous growth. Housing affordability is an example. Cost of daycare and the cost of transportation is an example. Employers can do many things to assist employees with their daycare needs or their Orca card needs. And so we're going to have those discussions to make sure that, again, we are piping in the profits and the philanthropic and corporate social responsibility goals back into the communities that matter, which are ordinary working people still trying to stay and live and optimize their life in Seattle. And last, I would say that what is called the Innovation Advisory Council, where you have tech leaders coming together, looking at their solutions, whether they're software solutions or philanthropic solutions, coming together collaboratively, that I will make sure that they are working on all cylinders. I apologize for using a fossil fuel reference there, but they'll be working on all cylinders to use their expertise, their strategic planning, their use of social media, to make sure that we are working on our most critical solution problems, which are homelessness right now and public safety and small business revitalization. I want to bring all of that talent that we have around here and get them off the bench in terms of civic involvement. And the entry point for them will be crystal clear under the Innovation Advisory Council that I will lead. I won't be the one that just come in and give a rah-rah speech and leave. I'll roll up my sleeves and work collectively with them as well.
Well, one of the big issues that I think that folks in Seattle, certainly leaders in Seattle, were going to have to roll up their sleeves on has now been removed from the ballot, and that is the Compassion Seattle Charter Amendment. So given that is not on the ballot, it's still the issues behind it remain. What do you think of the broad concept to both mandate housing and services, but also mandate the clearing of campsites in public spaces? Because it was building toward a fairly controversial point in the mayoral race so far.
Yeah. So to speak directly on the point, I did support it, and I didn't support it with a huge amount of reservations. I thought it required 12% of the general sub-fund to be used for homelessness directly to it. I thought it required a published plan, sort of in a dashboard format as well, but a published plan with cost per unit, cost per person. I thought it still required judicial diversion from the criminal process to make sure that we were not criminalizing poverty. It required the construction of 2,000 units the first year, 1,000 for the first 6 months and 1,000 for the second 6 months. So I thought it required a level of accountability that we need to see in City Hall, measurable goals. I did not see it as a dog whistle for unauthorized encampments for criminalizing poverty. And I will tell folks that many good people who opposed it were looking at it being sort of a inhumane approach to treating the homelessness. And for those critics, I would say, particularly if the criticism is aimed at me or my strategy, how dare you say that my wife and I have been in this space for decades trying to help the homeless community. My wife and I together, she used to be the CEO and president of United Way. We spend time in the philanthropic community, in the nonprofit worlds, doing everything we can to help people who are poor and who do not have the opportunity. I would never condone a policy that criminalizes poverty, that doesn't at the core help people who have fallen through the cracks. So I thought it was something we should get behind. My opponent opposed it. I respect everyone's opinion, but the status quo is completely unacceptable to me. And I have no shame in saying that at the same time we help people, that we need to reclaim our parks and our open spaces. And it's inhumane to have someone sleep on a sidewalk. I'm intolerant of that, not because I by any stretch hate those people. It is my love for the city and my love for everyone in this city that would have suggested my support for that particular charter amendment.
Well, switching tracks slightly to other public services, do you support municipal broadband? This is another issue that has come up in Olympia. And should the city contribute financially to building such a system?
So I would have loved to be the champion of municipal broadband. I've used city budget and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to see if we could pull it off. Because I've looked at where cities like, I think Chattanooga, Tennessee, I think that's a great example of where it is sort of worked, where cities do not have the build out. And I would love to champion that to make sure that all of our residents and small business and large businesses could join the kind of broadband that can be created. Unfortunately, the numbers do not work out. And if you look at the city's report done in 2020, you look at many of the writings that I published prior to 2020 and earlier years, 2015, 2016, that when you look at a few things, you look at the take rate of what people must do to leave the private networks, whether I'll use the two big companies as an example, Comcast and CenturyLink, knowing there are many other providers. You look at the take rate where people have to leave. You look at the lack of a competitive negotiating position the city of Seattle would be with respect to content, which is often subsidizing the cost of build out. The numbers just don't pencil out. So at this point, I don't think it's feasible. And I'm disappointed when I say that. I know that in 2000, I actually pulled something out. I think in 2017, the University of Pennsylvania Law School did a deep dive and looked at all of the cities that are either trying to do municipal broadband or who has expressed an interest. And they concluded again that it was not feasible to cover their costs. And what would happen then is the city would have to continually subsidize the municipally owned broadband network, meaning that you would have to pull out money from homelessness services and affordable housing services and transportation ecosystem, transportation structure. So I don't think the numbers work out right now. And so I think the smarter strategy in 2022 will be to do everything possible to work with the existing providers, driving the cost down, making sure that it is easy for them to give everyone broadband access. We know that it's an equalizer in communities in terms of social justice and access becomes so critically important. I've been awarded for some of my work in this arena nationally, but right now the numbers are still not working out for municipal broadband structure.
All right then, and last of the big questions, what do you think is the most important innovation to emerge from Seattle in the last 50 years?
Well, if I have to reduce it, I guess, to one thing, maybe I'll cheat a little bit and squeeze in another, but I'd say the PC to come out of this region. What MS-DOS did to the world of computing, I think, was a game changer for everyone. And if I said I was going to cheat a little bit, I'd say what we've done with e-commerce coming out of this city to the level that it has, it was a huge game changer, which changed our whole ecosystem. So, but I'll start with the personal computing world that we've been a world leader in.
All right, now it is time for lightning round. This is for our particularly extra geeky listeners and readers. Okay.
These kinds of questions are the ones that scare me the most, but go ahead.
All right. First off, Mac, or I guess I could guess that now from your last answer, Mac or PC?
PC.
Your phone, Apple or Android?
I got a funny answer on that one. So Apple, the funny answer was I was the last to stop using a Microsoft phone. I couldn't get the apps. But Apple.
All right then. Are you an Amazon Prime member?
Yes.
Favorite app and why?
I'm going to say Kindle. I'm going to say that for me to access books while I walk and jog, my jog is still a glorified walk, is a game changer for my life. So I'm going to say my Kindle app.
All right, you have to pick one. You don't have to give a reason why, but your choices are TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or Netflix. Pick one.
Netflix.
Well, that'll actually lead us to another question then. What habit, good or bad, did you either pick up or shed during the pandemic?
Spinning, bicycle, stationary bicycle riding. I was not big on that at all, but now I'm all in.
Peloton or something along those lines?
Peloton, exactly.
Unlike everyone else, of course. All right, last one. Best show to stream while you're cooped up at home?
I'm a throner. I have to. Game of Thrones. I think you watch it a second time around, you pick up on stuff you missed.
All right, then. Bruce, thank you. Bruce Harrell, Seattle mayoral candidate. Bruce, thank you so much for joining GeekWire.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun.